Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy GZTV back with another review of Stranger Things. This is the finale for Season 4, Volume 1, and man, what a damn journey it has been to watch this television series. Ever since it came out back in 2016, this has been a hit for Netflix, one of their biggest successes since Breaking Bad, since Walking Dead. Walking Dead's not officially a Netflix thing, but it's been on their programs for years, so yeah. In this episode, we're gonna find out what really happened at Hawkins' lab that led Eleven to being here. We have to wait another month, for part 2, but we'll need time to recover after a feature-length, epic finale of Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1. Let's get into it. Very, very long, terrifying journey. We finally make it to Chapter 7, the Massacre at Hawkins' lab, the feature-length finale of Part 1 of Stranger Things Season 4. At long last, we finally learn what actually happened to Elle during the massacre at Hawkins' lab. But first, let's peek behind the Iron Curtain and check in on Hopper to see how he's handling that Demogorgon. That's where they kind of open the episode. In their cell awaiting their dance with the Demogorgon, Hop and Enzo's unlikely friendship is blossoming as they talk about their kids. They bond over how Elle and Mikhail, Enzo's son, are in the same phase of life where they are too cool for their dear old dads. Meanwhile, Joyce and Murray's genius plan is going off without a hitch due to Murray's A-plus acting skills and flawless Russian accent. Shout out to Collider, by the way, for giving me the plot for this. That's not really my job to give you guys the plot. I'm more here to review it, but I had to go over the plot because I kind of forgot about it. It's been like a week and like 3 days since I watched this episode. The head guard gives them a front row seat to watch the show, and break recognition dawns on their faces when they hear the Demogorgon snarling and chittering through the closed door. The buzzer goes off, and Hop and the other inmates rush to choose their weapons. Hop grabs a spear and wraps it in a rag that he immediately soaks in vodka. Unfortunately, his grand plan is off to a rough start. The Demogorgon is released and immediately starts eating people's faces while, to his panic, Hop can't get his spear to catch fire. It's one of those dramatic things in movies we see all the time. Finally, Hop manages to get his spear lit. He wards off the Demogorgon while Enzo tries in vain to pry open the door. Above, Murray pulls a gun on the guard and demands that he shoot the Demogorgon, but of course he refuses to be a traitor to his country. Murray and Joyce drag him up to the control room and tell another guard to open the door to let Hop and Enzo out. He also refuses because, as Murray says, these commies are committed. So Murray busts out his sweet karate moves and knocks them both out. Joyce promptly starts hitting all the buttons on the control panel at random, one of which opens the doors below. Enzo and Hop rush through it, but to their horror, the Demogorgon is not going without a fight, as it pries open the doors before they can close. Hop hurls the spear javelin style into that Demogorgon's open mouth, and it screeches in rage and stumbles backwards enough for the doors to close. Another door behind them opens, and Hop cautiously walks out, fists raised. He is stunned to see Joyce, who rushes forward and throws her arms around him. He looks utterly dazed for a few moments before he smiles and slowly presses his face against her head as they hold each other tight. Very, very tear-inducing moment. This is a very emotional. Guys, I look really tan. And don't make a race joke in the comments. I came back from Florida. Don't be weird, please. It might be bad lighting for a guy that just got back from tanning in Florida. Very, very emotional moment. Tears of joy when that happened. But moving over to Hawkins, a very shirtless Steve is right where we left him, thrashing around in the Upside Down as he struggles to fight off some very aggressive demo bats. Nancy, Robin, and Eddie drop through the gate just in time to beat the crap out of the swarming horde using oars from the boat. Steve, freed, does something super badass, very Ozzy Osbourne, as Eddie would say, the very rock star punk character shining right through, and steps on a demobat with his bare foot and then rips it in half. Temporarily free from the flying beast, they run into the woods to take cover before another horde swarms them. Steve, unfortunately, is a little woozy from those bat bites, and we echo Robin here. Can these weird supernatural bats have rabies? Do we have to worry about Steve having rabies? Nancy and Steve share another moments as she wraps his wounds, very romantic. I can see her cheating on him in the future. In the distance, you can faintly hear Jonathan and Nancy's shippers screeching. People wanted that couple to work, I suppose. Contemplating their next move, the group decides to go to Nancy's house. The creepy, crawly, upside-down version of it, though, where she keeps guns in a room. Steve walks with Eddie, who is getting quite the crash course in the upside down, or as he calls it, Hawkins, but with monsters and nasty shit. They share an absolutely precious moment where Eddie admits he has always been a little jealous of how much Dustin looks up to Steve. He says that the kid worships him. He says, "Kid worships you, dude. Like, you have no idea. It's kind of annoying, to be honest." Eddie tells Steve it was very metal what he did back there with the demo bats, and admits that if it weren't for the ladies jumping in first, he never would have jumped into Lover's Lake to save Steve Harrington's ass. He is a simp. By the way, Nancy didn't waste a second, which was, according to Eddie, as unambiguous a sign of true love as his cynical eyes have ever seen. Do you hear that? It's the Jonathan Nancy shippers again complaining. Should someone go check on them to make sure they're good? They arrive at the Wheeler house, where, to Nancy's confusion, her guns are not where she left them. In fact, something is way off, even for the Upside Down. She flips through her diary, where the last entry is from November 6, 1983. The day Will went missing and the gate was opened. Nancy's guns aren't here because they don't exist yet. Somehow, the Upside Down is stuck in the past. Very unfortunate. Meanwhile, Steve realizes they can hear Dustin, who is on the other side, talking to Lucas and Erica in the Wheeler's kitchen, while the police question Max about why they were at Lover's Lake. Officer Callahan says they shouldn't have started with Max first because she was, kind of mean. She's a very iconic character in the season, and she gets a lot more screen time, a lot more moments than she did in the previous season, so that's great. Dustin theorizes that with each of Vecna's kills, he's not simply killing each victim, he's making a psychic connection with each victim that is powerful enough to rip a hole in the fabric of time and space. He's opening more gates to their world, and who else do they know who wants to take over their world? The Mind Flayer. The Demogorgon was just the Mind Flayer's foot soldier that must make Vecna his 5-star general. As they are discussing their theory, Erica notices the light fixture in the Wheeler kitchen is flickering. On the other side, the Upside Down crew has discovered shimmery particles of light around the light fixture that they are able to touch and move around with their fingers. A very trippy moment, if you were smoking weed, you'd probably like this part of the show moment. Eddie taps the Morse code for SOS in the particles, and Dustin realizes that yes, the Scoop's troop elders, plus Nancy and Eddie, were stupid enough to go into Watergate without them. They steal little Holly Wheeler's light bright to communicate with the Upside Down team, who tells them they are stuck. Obviously. Dustin tells them their theory that there must be a gate at every murder site, so they grab their bikes, the Upside Down team and the Hawkins original team, and haul ass into Eddie's trailer, the site of Chrissy's murder. At Eddie's trailer, Dustin and the others poke a hole through that creepy crawly crack in the ceiling and toss up a makeshift rope made out of bed sheets, which unravels down in the Upside Down, defying the laws of physics. Another trippy moment. They pull Eddie's noticeably stained mattress. Who knows what those stains are? Eddie? You a little guilty there, bud? Under the crack. Robin crawls up the makeshift rope and lands on the mattress, and then Eddie follows. Nancy is next, but of course, you didn't think that the whole gang would make it out unscathed, did you? That's not the point of the show, right? Nancy starts to climb through the gate, but instead of tumbling and landing on Eddie's stained mattress, she falls through pitch black darkness and lands in a giant empty concrete pool covered in vines. And the Upside Down Steve is frantically shaking Nancy, who has gone into a trance, Vecna's curse. And Vecna's illusion, Nancy sees Barb in the pool, her body decomposing, a slimy vine slithering out of her open mouth. Blood starts to pour down the side of the pool while Nancy screams. Vecna asks her if she remembers what she did, leaving Barb alone and vulnerable by the pool. The perfect snack for the Demogorgon. Was she got it on with Steve in his room, very guilt-inducing. When he kills someone, Vecna tells Nancy he never forgets. We hate to leave you hanging out on that note, but let's take a quick detour and check in on Elle, who is unfortunately regressing. She can't even crush a can of Coke if she wanted to. Dr. Brenner has no other choice but to jump way ahead in the timeline and immerse Elle in one last memory, the massacre at Hawkins' lab. It is the morning after Elle's bullies attacked her in the Rainbow Room. Elle pretends to not remember who attacked her. Dr. Brenner tries to get a confession out of the kids when two, snickering with his friends, tells him that Elle probably fell because she's clumsy and stupid. Not the brightest move on Two's part. Dr. Brenner calls him forward and puts a shock collar on him and reminds him in a horrible, painful way that he is not immune to the rules. He crumbles on the floor in agony while the kids watch in horror. Afterwards, in the Rainbow Room, the orderly invites Elle to a game of chess. He tells her not to show any emotion as he speaks, but to simply continue playing the game. He says that once 2 is released from the infirmary, he and the others are going to attempt to kill 11. Papa will allow it to happen. In fact, he wants it to happen and has been planning it for some time now, because Elle frightens him. He knows she is more powerful than the others, and he won't be able to control her. That's why the security cameras are cut off on the night of the attack. The orderly tells Elle that he is going to help her escape from the lab today and slips her a key card under the table. At almost 3 o'clock on the dot, Dr. Brenner comes in the Rainbow Room and pulls 10 out of the testing. Remember, this is what we saw in the first flashback scene of the season, so shit's about to go down. Like, it was a very familiar scene when I saw it. Elle approaches the guard at the door and tells him she feels dizzy. He takes her out of the Rainbow Room and walks her to the infirmary. When she turns around, however, Elle is already gone, having escaped under his nose. She uses the key card and runs downstairs to the basement where she meets the orderly. He shows her a secret way out of the lab, but tells her she can't go with her because of a tracker Dr. Brenner implanted under the skin of his neck called Soteria. Elle tells him, "You help me, I help you." She uses her power to rip the tracker right out of his neck. He picks it up and says, a little ominously, "Who knew something so small could cause so much trouble?" He thanks Elle, then pulls her along with him as guards suddenly burst in. They corner Elle and the orderly in a hallway, and the orderly tells her that she doesn't have to be afraid of them anymore. He stretches his hand out in surprise. He has telekinetic powers just like 11. He tosses the guards like a sack of potatoes. Sack of freaking potatoes, and snaps one of the guards next with a simple jerk of his head. He ushers Elle into a closet and tells her, "Like I said, we're alike, you and I." He pulls up his sleeve and reveals a 1 tattoo on the inside of his wrist, smiles, then tells her to wait there for him. So we already know that he is 1, the character. Elle soon hears the sound of panic screams and cautiously leaves the room. She sobs in horror as she sees Dr. Brenner knocked out on the floor and the mangled, bloody bodies of the guards and the children who have been ruthlessly murdered. She goes back into the Rainbow Room where 1, his white uniform now splattered with blood and his eyes bloodshot as he focuses all of his telekinetic energy on murdering a bunch of children, is not looking so friendly anymore. He turns around and sees Elle standing there horrified at its wreckage. He asks why she cries for them after everything they did to her. He says, "I was scared once too. I know what it's like to be different, to be alone in this world." Now, this brings us back to Nancy, who has crawled out of Vecna's red suit mind world and stumbled into a very familiar memory of a young Victor Creel and his family entering their home for the first time. Only this time, the camera zooms on little Henry Creel, Victor's son, who, surprise, is actually number 1. 1 tells Elle that, like her, he didn't fit in with the other children. All his teachers and doctors thought that there was something broken inside him. This was a really cool parallel in the show. Nancy in the Upside Down at Victor Creel's house, and then Henry Creel, who is 1, telling the story as Nancy's walking through the house and seeing the family peaceful. His parents thought moving to Hawkins, a change of scenery, would do him so good. To his surprise, his new home brought about a newfound sense of purpose. Nancy watches as Henry 1 finds a nest of black widows living inside a vent in the house. 1 tells Elle that he found the spiders endlessly fascinating. Like him, spiders are deeply misunderstood, solitary creatures. They are gods of our world who immobilize and feed on the weak. Humans, on the other hand, are a unique type of pest, multiplying and poisoning our world, all while enforcing a structure of their own, a deeply unnatural structure. Where others saw order, 1 says he saw a straitjacket. 1, sickened by the monotony and pointlessness of human life, realized then that he could restore balance to a broken world and be a predator, but for good. That's pretty subjective, actually. Nancy watches in horror as Henry 1 tortures a rabbit in the yard, snapping its bones with his mind. 1 tells Elle that he practiced, he realized that he could do more than he ever imagined. He became an explorer of others' memories as he reached into their minds. He says that his parents, who presented themselves as good, normal people, were liars, just like everyone else. Nancy, at this point, has run back into the Creel house, and where she sees a baby burning alive in its cradle. 1 says that Victor was naive and believed it was a demon cursing them for their sins, but somehow his mother knew and despised him for it. She called a doctor, Dr. Brenner, I would assume, to fix him. Of course, 1 says that left him with no choice. Nancy watches as Victor's wife flies up to the ceiling. Henry, 1's eyes on her. He closes them, and her bones start to snap. 1 says with each life he took, he grew more powerful, but he was still a child and did not know his limits. He fell into a coma and woke up in the care of Dr. Brenner, who didn't want to just study him, he wanted to control him. When he realized that he couldn't control Henry 1, he tried instead to recreate him. He started a program, and others like him were soon born, like 11. Nancy watches as Dr. Brenner tattoos a 1 onto Henry 1's wrist. 11 at this point is really not vibing with 1's whole secret villainous backstory. Looking horrified, she tells him that he tricked her. One looks wildly offended by the accusation. He says, "Tricked you? No, I saved you. You are a prisoner here, just like me." He tells Eleven that she is superior, and that is why Dr. Brenner is so frightened of her. Together, he says, they could remake the world. He extends his hand with a smile and asks her to join him. To his shock, Elle says without hesitation, no, and throws her hand away. He goes flying backwards from the force of her power and crashes against the wall. They have a little telekinetic duel where it really seems like Elle is screwed. She is floating in the air, eyes bleeding, bones snapping. Pretty familiar sight. People know what that means. She was about to die. When she finds strength in her memory, she remembers with fury her mother being dragged away from her, two and the other bullies tormenting her, and all the mangled bodies of the kids one murdered. Then the screen goes black. But it's not over. We hear a baby crying as we are swirling around what looks like clouds of Vecna's red soup world and sees Elle's mother in the hospital bed, smiling and holding her as she says, "Jane, I love you." Elle lifts her hands and sends one crashing through the mirror and pins him against the wall. She bellows out that classic 11 saving the world yet again scream, and one starts to disintegrate as the wall behind him begins to tear, opening up the gate to the upside down. Vine starts to wrap around him and pull him through. He goes hurtling through the gate and into the upside down as red lightning strikes him repeatedly. His body starts to deform, no longer the orderly and white with his suspiciously great hair. Instead, we see him as he is now, Vecna, Vine slowly uncurling around his wrist, revealing one tattoo. The episode ends. So guys, that's going to do it for Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1. I will see you in July for the final 2 feature-length episodes of Season 4. Oh man, let's just emotionally recover from the wild journey that was Volume 1. Very, very fantastic. Fantastic way to end. So many plot twists. Obviously, if you haven't watched it and you're watching this video, it's a little too late for you to watch it. I kind of gave you the whole plot. But if you muted me somehow, go watch it. And if you wanted to just hear the story of it, go watch it. Go see it visually. It looks fantastic. It's literally the length of a movie, and I was entertained throughout. So Stranger Things did a great job on this one. But again, we gotta wait 3 weeks, and we will get 2 more episodes. That closes it for my Stranger Things stuff for now. We are going to be starting to watch Euphoria. Big announcement here. Euphoria. Yeah.